Have you ever paused to consider that the challenges you face might be part of a grander design, a chapter in a story that's still unfolding? What if your current struggles, though intense and overwhelming, are shaping you for a purpose far greater than you can imagine? C.S. Lewis once pondered the idea that pain is not an enemy but a tool used by the divine to mold us into who we are meant to be. He suggested that our trials are not punishments but opportunities for growth, a way for God to draw us closer to Him. So instead of asking why you're suffering, perhaps the real question is, what is God preparing you for? There's a promise that underpins this struggle, a promise that God will not only see you through, but will also use this pain to bring about something beautiful in your life. Stay with us as we delve into this profound truth and discover how, through God's strength, you can emerge from your trial stronger, wiser, and more deeply connected to His purpose for you. Let's begin by reflecting on Isaiah 41 verse 10, where God assures us of His unwavering presence and support in every storm we face. Grounded in the profound assurance of Isaiah 41 verse 10, where God promises, "Fear not, for I am with you, be not dismayed. For I am your God," we are reminded of His constant presence in our lives. This divine assurance is more than a comforting thought, it's a vital anchor that sustains us through the storms of life. In our daily struggles, the realization that God is ever present is not just an abstract idea but a foundational truth that can transform how we face adversity. As C.S. Lewis poignantly observed in his work, the problem of pain is not merely a challenge to be overcome but a tool God uses to shape and refine us, much like a sculptor chiseling away at a block of marble to reveal a masterpiece. Pain, though often dreaded, is an inevitable part of the human journey. Jesus in His earthly ministry did not shy away from this reality. In John 16 verse 33, He candidly told His disciples, "In this world you will have trouble. But take heart, I have overcome the world." This statement serves as a reminder that the presence of pain is not indicative of God's absence or displeasure. Rather, it is a testament to the fallen state of our world and the spiritual growth that can emerge from such trials. C.S. Lewis writes, "We can ignore even pleasure, but pain insists upon being attended to. God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world." This quote encapsulates the idea that pain, while difficult, is also a divine call to deeper awareness and transformation. When confronted with suffering, our initial response might be to question why we are the ones to bear such burdens. "Why me?" or "What have I done to deserve this?" are common cries of the afflicted. However, pain is not always a consequence of wrongdoing. As Lewis emphasizes, the human spirit will not even begin to try to surrender self-will as long as all seems to be well with it. Pain, therefore, serves as a divine intervention, urging us to relinquish our illusion of control and surrender to God's greater plan. It's through these painful experiences that our superficial attachments are stripped away, leaving us with a clearer understanding of what truly matters: our relationship with God. The story of Job is a powerful biblical example that illustrates this truth. Job, a man of unwavering faith, faced unimaginable trials, losing his health, wealth, and family. Despite his anguish, Job's faith in God did not waver. He questioned, mourned, and struggled. Yet he held on to the belief that God was with him, even in his darkest moments. In the end, God restored and blessed Job beyond what he had before. Job's story is not just about endurance, but about the transformative power of faith amidst suffering. Your pain, no matter how overwhelming, is not the final chapter of your story. Just as a seed must be buried in the darkness before it can sprout, so must we sometimes endure the shadows of suffering before experiencing the light of God's restoration. Pain, as C.S. Lewis suggests, can be a catalyst for profound personal growth, teaching us empathy, patience, and a deeper reliance on God. It has the power to soften our hearts, making us more compassionate and attuned to the suffering of others. In the thick of pain, it's easy to lose sight of its purpose. However, pain is not just a trial, it's a teacher. It guides us to greater wisdom and deeper faith, stripping away our pride and fears, and revealing the core of our being, our relationship with God. Pain, though painful, is also a profound reminder of our need for divine grace, a grace that is ever present and sufficient for every trial we face. In the journey of life, pain often finds us in unexpected places, catching us off guard and leaving us questioning the purpose behind our suffering. However, it's in these very moments of trial that we must remember an essential truth: God is not absent, He is intricately present, shaping and molding us through our struggles. C.S. Lewis, in his profound reflection on the human condition, famously noted, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world." This statement underscores the idea that pain, though difficult, is often a tool through which God communicates His deepest lessons to us. It is not merely an unfortunate aspect of life, but a divine method of refining our souls, drawing us closer to Him, and preparing us for the ultimate joy that awaits. As we delve deeper into this concept, we must recognize that pain serves a dual purpose. Firstly, it is a catalyst for spiritual growth. When we encounter pain, it strips away the superficial layers of our existence, forcing us to confront our vulnerabilities and rely more fully on God. In these moments, our prayers become more earnest, our faith more genuine, and our understanding of God's grace more profound. Just as gold is refined by fire, so too are our spirits refined through trials, emerging purer and stronger than before. Lewis aptly described this process when he said, "We are not necessarily doubting that God will do the best for us, we are wondering how painful the best will turn out to be." This reflection invites us to trust in God's plan, even when it involves discomfort, knowing that the outcome will be for our ultimate good. Secondly, pain serves as a reminder of our need for God's presence. It's easy to feel abandoned when we are hurting, to believe that God has turned His face away. Yet Scripture reminds us that this is far from the truth. In Psalm 34, verse 18, we find a comforting promise: "The Lord is close to the brokenhearted and saves those who are crushed in spirit." This verse reveals that in our most painful moments, God is not a distant observer, He is an ever-present comforter, holding us together when we feel like we are falling apart. It is in these seasons of deep suffering that God's presence is most tangible, offering a peace that surpasses all understanding and a strength that carries us through our darkest days. Consider the profound example of Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane. In the face of overwhelming agony, He sought solace in the presence of His Father. Through His earnest prayers, He found the strength to endure what was ahead. Similarly, we are invited to draw near to God in our pain, to pour out our hearts and find comfort in His embrace. God does not promise an immediate end to our suffering, but He assures us of His sustaining presence through it. Furthermore, we must understand that God is actively working in our pain, weaving it into a larger narrative of redemption and hope. Romans 8, verse 28 offers a powerful reminder that in all things, God works for the good of those who love Him. This means that no matter how bleak our circumstances may seem, God is orchestrating a purpose far beyond our understanding. He is using our pain to shape our character, deepen our trust in Him, and ultimately, to bring us closer to the fulfillment of His promises. While pain is an inevitable part of our human experience, it is also a profound opportunity to encounter God in a deeper, more intimate way. Through our trials, we are refined, strengthened, and drawn closer to the heart of our Creator. So, when you find yourself in a season of suffering, take heart. Trust that God is with you, working all things for your good, and hold on to the hope that brighter days are ahead. Remember, the same God who wept at the tomb of Lazarus is the one who is with you in your pain, ready to turn your mourning into joy and your trials into triumphs. Pain is an inevitable part of the human experience, but understanding that God is with us in our suffering offers a profound sense of solace. C.S. Lewis once observed, "God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world." This suggests that pain, while difficult, serves a higher purpose. It draws us closer to God and compels us to seek his presence more earnestly. When we feel isolated in our suffering, it's crucial to remember that God's Spirit is not just near, it dwells within us. He is the Comforter, providing peace that surpasses human understanding. This peace may not erase the pain, but it grants us the strength to persevere, reminding us that our suffering is not in vain. As Lewis pointed out, pain insists upon being attended to, and in doing so, it becomes a conduit for God's grace and strength in our lives. Moreover, God often manifests his presence through the people he places around us. Leaning on the community of faith isn't a sign of weakness, it's a recognition of God's provision. Through others, he extends his love and care, turning our moments of despair into opportunities for deeper connection and support. In our darkest moments, it's easy to lose sight of the bigger picture. But as the Apostle Paul reminds us, our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 17. The pain we endure today is preparing us for an everlasting victory. Just as a marathon runner endures grueling training with their eyes set on the finish line, we must keep our focus on the eternal glory that awaits us. God's view of time is vastly different from ours. What may seem like an endless night of suffering is but a brief moment in his grand plan. Trusting in this perspective allows us to find refuge and strength in his presence, knowing that he is shaping us for something far greater than we can imagine. In this process, our faith is refined, our character is strengthened, and our ultimate victory in Christ is assured. So in your pain, lean into God's presence and trust that he is leading you toward healing and eternal glory. In much the same way that a silversmith refines silver, God refines our souls through the trials and tribulations we face. C.S. Lewis. In his profound work, The Problem of Pain, illuminates this concept by suggesting that pain is God's megaphone to rouse a deaf world. It's through our suffering that we are awakened to the deeper realities of our existence and our need for God's grace. Each trial is not merely an obstacle but a divine instrument, meticulously designed to remove the impurities from our hearts and bring us closer to the image of Christ. Lewis further elaborates that God's purpose is not to simply bring us comfort but to transform us into beings capable of experiencing his love fully. This transformation often requires the chiseling away of our flawed nature, our pride, our selfishness, our doubts. Just as the silversmith only stops refining when he can see his reflection in the silver, God will continue to refine us until we reflect his character. This process, though painful, is not without purpose. As we endure, we develop perseverance, character, and hope, a hope that does not disappoint because it is rooted in God's promises. Our temporary sufferings, when viewed through the lens of eternity, become the very means by which God prepares us for the incredible glory that awaits. Therefore, when you find yourself overwhelmed by life's difficulties, remember that God is not absent. He is actively at work, using your pain to bring forth a reflection of his glory in your life. This understanding not only brings comfort but also inspires others who witness your faith in the midst of trials. Your endurance becomes a powerful testimony, encouraging others to seek the God who is shaping you into his masterpiece. So hold on to hope, knowing that God is faithful and the glory he is cultivating within you is eternal. As C.S. Lewis once poignantly reflected, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our conscience, but shouts in our pains. It is his megaphone to rouse a deaf world in our moments of deepest trials. It might feel as though the fire is too intense, the burden too heavy to bear. But much like Lewis's assertion, these trials are not merely hardships, they are the voice of God, calling us to a deeper understanding and transformation. The challenges we face are not designed to harm us, but to refine us, much like the refining of precious metals. As impurities rise to the surface, God's gentle hand skims away our pride, doubts, and fears, leaving behind a heart that reflects His image more clearly. In these moments, it's crucial to remember that the fire of refinement is not a tool of destruction, but one of creation. Lewis's insights remind us that God is not absent in our suffering, rather, He is intimately present, closely monitoring the process, ensuring that we are not consumed by the flames but purified through them. Like a skilled silversmith, God knows exactly how much heat we can endure, and He remains by our side, using each trial to strengthen our faith and draw us nearer to Him. When we find ourselves in the midst of such fires, we must take heart, trusting that God's hand is at work. The temporary nature of our trials belies the eternal strength and purity being forged within us. As Lewis so eloquently put it, hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny. When the refining process is complete, we will emerge not only with a faith that is unshakable, but with a clarity of purpose, ready to fulfill the divine plan God has set before us. Our trials, though painful, are the very means through which God molds us into vessels of His glory. In the crucible of life, pain often emerges as a relentless force, molding and shaping us in ways we cannot fully comprehend. It is akin to the refining fire that purifies gold, burning away impurities and leaving behind a more resilient and steadfast soul. This process, while essential, can be overwhelming, draining us of energy and hope. Yet, it is in these moments of deepest suffering that the truth of God's power becomes most evident. C.S. Lewis profoundly observed, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. Pain, therefore, is not merely a torment to be endured, but a divine tool that draws us closer to the heart of God. When we reach the end of our strength, we find the beginning of His. The Apostle Paul reminds us in 2 Corinthians 12, verse 9, that God's grace is sufficient, and His power is made perfect in our weakness. This scripture is a beacon of hope, illuminating the dark valleys we traverse. In acknowledging our fragility, we create space for God's strength to be made manifest in our lives. It is not our ability to endure that carries us through trials, but God's unfailing grace. As Lewis notes, we must lay before Him what is in us, not what ought to be in us. This surrender is an act of trust, an admission that we are not self-sufficient, and it is this very dependence that God desires. Our journey of faith requires us to relinquish control. Much like a child who instinctively reaches for their parent's hand in moments of fear. This act of surrender is not a sign of defeat, but a declaration of trust in God's sovereign will. Just as David, a mere shepherd boy, triumphed over the giant Goliath not by his own might, but by the power of God, so too are we called to face our own giants. Whether it be illness, financial strain, or broken relationships, our victory does not lie in our strength, but in our reliance on God's omnipotence. David's story is a testament to the truth that when we place our faith in God, no obstacle is insurmountable. The challenges we face, no matter how daunting, are not meant to be shouldered alone. God's presence is a constant source of comfort and strength, and His grace is more than sufficient to see us through. As Lewis poignantly stated, the future is something which everyone reaches at the rate of 60 minutes an hour. Whatever he does, whoever he is, this reminds us that while we may not see immediate results, God's timing is perfect, and His strength is at work even when it is not visible to us. In all of this, there is a profound sense of gratitude that wells up within us for the God who guides us through the storms of life. We are not abandoned to our pain, but are lovingly led through it, transformed by His grace. Let us therefore lift our hearts in thanksgiving, acknowledging that it is God's strength that sustains us, His wisdom that guides us, and His love that envelops us in our weakest moments. For it is in our surrender that we find our true strength, and in our trust that we discover the fullness of God's power at work in our lives. When we find ourselves burdened by life's challenges, it's easy to rely on our strength, believing that our efforts alone will carry us through. Yet, Scripture reminds us that true strength comes not from our abilities but from our dependence on God. In 2 Corinthians 12 verse 9, Paul speaks of a profound truth: "My grace is sufficient for you. For my power is made perfect in weakness." This verse calls us to a place of surrender, where we acknowledge our limitations and allow God's strength to sustain us. C.S. Lewis, in his Reflections on Faith, echoes this sentiment, noting that relying on God has to begin all over again every day, as if nothing had yet been done. This daily act of surrender is not a sign of defeat, but a testament to the strength we find in God. Trusting in God's perfect timing is another challenge we face, especially when our plans don't unfold as expected. The Bible tells us in Ecclesiastes 3 verse 1 that there is a time for everything and a season for every activity under the heavens. God's timing is impeccable, even when it seems out of sync with our desires. Waiting patiently for His plan to unfold requires faith, much like a seed that takes time to sprout and bloom. Isaiah 40 verse 31 reminds us that those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. This promise encourages us to trust that God's plan is always for our good, even when we cannot see the outcome. In moments of waiting and uncertainty, it's essential to find peace in surrendering control to God. Matthew 11 verse 28 invites us to lay down our burdens. "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." By trusting in God's wisdom and timing, we allow ourselves to grow in faith, like a seed nurtured by His grace. As we relinquish our hold on life's reins, we discover that God's plans, though often mysterious, are ultimately what we need. This journey of faith, grounded in patience and trust, leads us to a deeper relationship with God, where we can gratefully acknowledge His guidance and care in our lives. In the tapestry of life, woven with threads of faith and endurance, there exists a profound truth that echoes through the ages. God's timing is always perfect, even when it feels delayed to our impatient hearts. As C.S. Lewis once noted, "I am sure that God keeps no one waiting unless He sees that it is good for him to wait." This waiting, often seen as a burden, is in truth a period of divine preparation. God, in His infinite wisdom, may delay His response to our prayers not out of neglect, but out of love. He is often shielding us from unseen dangers, or perhaps He is meticulously aligning circumstances that will ultimately lead to a blessing far greater than we could ever conceive. To trust in His timing is to acknowledge that His perspective transcends our limited vision, and to believe that He is always working behind the scenes for our good. During these periods of waiting, when the silence of heaven seems overwhelming, our faith is tested, and it is here that we must anchor ourselves in continued prayer and trust. The Bible reminds us in Isaiah 40 verse 31, "But they who wait for the Lord shall renew their strength. They shall mount up with wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not faint." This verse encapsulates the essence of perseverance and faith, urging us to remain steadfast in our prayers and trust in God's faithfulness. The breakthrough we seek will arrive in its perfect time, bringing with it a resolution more magnificent and complete than we could have ever imagined. Moreover, suffering, though painful, is not without purpose in God's grand design. It is in these crucibles of hardship that we are refined and prepared for the incredible blessings God has in store. Romans 8 verse 18 reassures us, "For I consider that the sufferings of this present time are not worth comparing with the glory that is to be revealed to us." Here we are reminded that our trials are temporary and serve a greater purpose to mold us into vessels capable of receiving God's abundant grace. Just as Job, after enduring immense suffering, was blessed with double what he had lost, so too does God promise restoration that exceeds our past losses. His restoration is not merely a return to the former state, but a transformation into something even better, overflowing with blessings that are beyond our comprehension. Restoration does not always come in the forms we expect. Sometimes, instead of regaining what was lost, we are gifted with new opportunities, deeper relationships, or a stronger, more resilient spirit. God, who knows our innermost needs, enriches our lives in ways that draw us closer to Him, filling our hearts with joy that surpasses mere material restoration. As Lewis wisely observed, God whispers to us in our pleasures, speaks in our consciences, but shouts in our pains. It is His megaphone to rouse a deaf world. It is in these moments of restoration that we hear His voice most clearly, guiding us towards a future filled with His peace and purpose. Restoration, however, is not an overnight miracle. It is a gradual process, much like the healing of a deep wound. God, in His faithfulness, remains with us throughout this journey, redeeming even the years we thought were lost to pain and hardship. He turns the most broken parts of our lives into something beautiful, weaving them into His greater plan. As we trust in His timing and remain faithful through the trials, we witness the unfolding of His promise, a life restored, not just to its former glory, but to something even more beautiful and purposeful. In embracing this truth, we find the strength to persevere, the faith to trust in God's plan, and the gratitude to thank Him for the restoration that He is already orchestrating in our lives. For in His hands all things are made new, and through His grace, our lives are transformed into a testimony of His boundless love and faithfulness. In life, there are moments when we feel stuck, as though our prayers have gone unanswered and our hopes remain unmet. During these times, it's easy to lose sight of the fact that God's timing is perfect, even when it doesn't align with our own. Psalm 27 verse 14 reminds us, "Wait for the Lord, be strong, and let your heart take courage. Wait for the Lord." This verse is a powerful call to patience and courage, urging us to trust that God is working behind the scenes. It's not in our control to understand all of His plans, but it is within our power to trust that He is orchestrating events in our lives for our ultimate good. Like a master weaver, God is intertwining the threads of our lives in a way that, when completed, will reveal a beautiful tapestry we could never have imagined. C.S. Lewis once said, "Hardships often prepare ordinary people for an extraordinary destiny." This profound statement aligns perfectly with the notion of holding on to hope, even when life feels overwhelming. When we are in the midst of trials, it's tempting to think that we've been forgotten or abandoned. Yet God's promise of restoration is something we can cling to with all our might. Romans 8 verse 18 echoes this sentiment. "I consider that our present sufferings are not worth comparing with the glory that will be revealed in us." This verse assures us that the hardships we endure are not only temporary, but are setting the stage for something far greater. God's restoration will surpass our wildest expectations, and we will come to see that every tear, every struggle was worth enduring. Through our pain, God is shaping us, refining our character, and preparing us for a future that is full of His grace and blessings. However, to fully embrace God's restoration, we must first surrender our pain to Him. It's human nature to hold on to our struggles, to try and bear our burdens alone. But the truth is, we were never meant to carry these weights by ourselves. Jesus invites us in Matthew 11 verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." This is a divine invitation to lay our pain at the feet of the one who is more than capable of handling it. By surrendering our struggles to God, we allow His presence to permeate our hearts, bringing comfort and strength in ways we could never achieve on our own. The act of surrender is not a sign of weakness, but a profound act of faith, trusting that God's love is enough to heal even the deepest wounds. It's also important to remember that our suffering is not permanent. The pain you feel today is temporary, and God is with you through every step of it. 2 Corinthians 4 verse 17 offers us this reassurance, for our light and momentary troubles are achieving for us an eternal glory that far outweighs them all. This verse encourages us to focus not on the pain itself, but on the eternal glory that is being prepared for us. Our current struggles are but a brief chapter in the grand story that God is writing for our lives. Brighter days are ahead, and with God by our side, we can endure anything with the confidence that His promises will never fail. As we navigate the trials of life, it's essential to stay connected to God through prayer. In prayer, we find strength, healing, and peace that surpasses all understanding. We can express our faith in God's plan and timing, knowing that He is working all things together for our good. A prayer for strength and restoration is not just a request, but an affirmation of God's ability to renew our spirits and restore our joy. Lord, grant me the strength to endure these trials with unwavering faith. Fill my heart with your peace, and let your word be a lamp unto my feet as I walk through these dark valleys. I trust in your perfect timing and believe that you are preparing something greater for me through this pain. Amen. In this prayer, we express our gratitude to God for His unending faithfulness. We acknowledge that even in the darkest moments, He is guiding us, holding us, and leading us toward a future filled with His promises. Through every trial, every tear, and every prayer, we are reminded that God's love is the anchor that holds us steady, the light that guides our path, and the hope that restores our souls. When a message stirs your spirit, let it be a light for others by sharing it. Subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell so you never miss an uplifting message. Let's grow in faith together, trusting that God's light will guide our path. May His blessings be with you always.